John, as I remember that day, the weather was absolutely gorgeous. In fact, I think there's a Viacom
absolutely.
special that was done several years ago where it has Elliot doing the forecasts, our colleague Elliot Abrams, at the 8:32 mark, and him talking about how pristine and beautiful and blue the skies were. I think it had been stormy and hot like the days before, and this beautiful air mass was in over New York City. And at one moment at 8:32, everything was pristine and blue. And then 20 minutes later, all hell was breaking loose.
Yeah, exactly. It was primary day, the mayoral primary in the city. And I was on the Upper East Side with the Democratic candidate. And I remember he came out and, as politicians are wont to do, said very grandiosely, "We will make history today." And I recorded it and went back to my truck. And we had pagers back then. And I got a page that said call station. And they told me that a small plane had hit the North Tower. And immediately I dropped everything that had anything to do with the election. And I raced down Harlem River Drive and then to the FDR.
Let's put that in perspective for folks who, those of us who know New York, Upper East Side, so upper is anything, when you're getting in the 67, how far up in the numbers were you at that point?
Yeah, in the 90s, I think. I think it was in the 90s. Yeah, so, just where it becomes eventually becomes the FDR coming down if you're along the East River. And I made it so quickly because there were ambulances and police cars screaming toward the tower, and I just got in the mix.
In the line. So how long had passed? So this was in the first 20, 30 minutes since that?
Oh, this was immediate. This was immediate. I'm going down. I'm listening to the station, and our anchor Lee Harris has one of our account execs, saleswoman on, who lives down in the Battery. And he's talking to her about, what it looks like. And all of a sudden she screams and he's watching the teleprompter, the television screen. Right. And he sees that another plane,
the second plane,
the South Tower.
Right.
Yeah. So at that point, I knew I was going into a war zone. I dropped the car up on Broadway. I ran, and as I was running toward the towers, people were running away from the towers, screaming, and I got to stop some of them and interview them. The cell technology was still in its infancy. My phone in the car, my handheld, none of it worked. But there was a record shop on Broadway, and they let me use their landline phone, and that's how I got on the air and did my first reports. I did the reports, and then the president was going to have an announcement, and they told me, come back after the president's announcement. We'll get you back on. So I ran down back to church, back to the South Tower, and I was standing outside the Century 21 department store that was there, and the fellow who worked the door, they wore these kind of neat-looking uniforms.
Yes.
He pulled me back, and he told me, "Stuff is falling, watch out." And what I guess I figured out he meant later was that people were jumping.
Right.
Now, I didn't see anyone jump at that moment. That was earlier. But I will tell you, I saw, just looking straight up, the fuselage, the black smoke. And then the police began clearing us out. And as I'm running back up to Broadway to interview people, because there's a massive crowd there, there's a line, 2 by 2, young firefighters walking to the scene. And of course, I don't know for 100% sure whether all of them died a few moments later when the South Tower imploded, disintegrated, vaporized. But I guess they did. And I was up on Broadway in the middle of just hundreds and hundreds of people. And I was trying to interview as many people as I could. And one woman just screamed something like, "It's coming down." But in your mind's eye, you're thinking of, a
piece of
tower
it, or right,
falling,
right,
falling.
okay, right.
And it wasn't. And it was this a tidal wave, a tsunami of just dust. But the crowd just, I guess people ran every which way. I was under 3 or 4 bodies. I thought that's how I would die, because, the weight on my chest, and, I'm not a big guy.
Right.
The weight was just, I got pushed into a building, and somehow people got up and got off, and we walked to the other side, which was Nassau Street. So there's Broadway, and then to the east there's Nassau Street, which runs north to south like Broadway. And as you mentioned, this bright, brilliant, beautiful September morn was gone, and the sky was grayish black, and ash was falling. It had already piled 3-4 inches high. People, grown men, business guys, were walking around in circles with their briefcases, like they didn't know. I later described it as nuclear winter.
Right.
Unfortunately, I had a brand new model recorder tied to my microphone with a little mini plug.
Sure.
Not the old recorders we used to use, and it got lost in the crush. So all of my interviews were lost.
Right.
So I had to rely on, my memory of what people told me when I finally got to an office building with a landline.
Then where were you when the second tower came down?
I was in the office building, which was closer, 3 or 4 blocks east, near the East River. You could not get a telephone anywhere. Right. We still had pay phones on the street.
Yes, we did.
And there were lines around the block, and nobody came at that point. People are usually pretty good to me when I show them the 10-10
wins mic flag, right?
Microphone, flag. But in this case, no, they wanted to get to their families. And when I finally got to an office building, and I kind of helped myself, there were deserted desks. And I just walked past the security guard, and I told him, I've got to get on the air. He knew who I was. And I was on the air, and then they broke in that the North Tower had come down as well. And by that point, we had a lot of reporters on the scene, and I was gasping for air. I had swallowed so much dust and stuff, and in between reports, I was just spitting it out. A very kind woman at a Burger King sat me down and said, before you go back on the radio, Mr. Montone, and she just poured water down my throat, and I threw up. And so it was a horror for anybody who was there. Right. But of course, a horror geometrically more for people who lost loved ones. And, I was fortunate that I was able to walk away. Had I not gone up to Broadway when I did, had the police not cleared out the area, I would not have made it out alive.
To listen to the full episode, just click the links below. And never miss a podcast by subscribing to Everything Under the Sun on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. New episodes every Friday.